Welcome to Core Finance, where I'm joined by Shaun Richards, who's from Notayesmaneconomics. How are you today, Shaun?
Good, thank you.
Right, yesterday, I know you love economic numbers and you mull over them for days and weeks, but it would appear that before yesterday's CPI numbers, a few people were mulling over them before they were released at 9:30.
Yes, well, we'll come to the pound a bit later, but just running through the numbers themselves. This is something that happens in the modern era, because those that follow BBC Radio 4 will have heard a debate saying the number was going to be higher, and they spent quite a bit of time explaining why it was going to be higher. Except here's the thing, not only was it lower, coming in at 2.6% as opposed to the 3% they were saying, but actually it was perfectly predictable, because most of the change was on petrol and diesel prices, which you can check every Tuesday morning, actually, the official figures come out. So that was quite a curiosity.
Right, so basically at 9 o'clock yesterday, which is half an hour before the figures were due, the pound was at 131.18. By 9:30, actually a fraction of a second before the release of the numbers, the pound was 130.71. So it fell half a cent before the number actually came out.
Well, none of this, of course, is outright proof, but it may well be that someone was, how should we put it, more equal than others in the trading here. And this has happened before. Trying to measure this statistically is, of course, very difficult in the fog of markets. That you could argue that the pound was at the upper end of its range.
Yes.
That's true. In terms of the actual official position, that changed at the beginning of this month. For those that weren't aware, various ministers and civil servants got the numbers 24 hours early,
right,
which created its own problems, and there are a lot of suspicions of that being leaked. So that now shouldn't be true. That's stopped. But as you can see, yes, that sort of thing keeps going on. Destroys markets, doesn't it?
It does. It's a nasty thing. It needs to be snuffed out, I think. But let's have a look at the away from the conspiracy theories. Brexit's effect. Well, it's another one actually. Brexit's effects on the UK will be profound and unpredictable, according to our good friends on the Lords Committee. Do you have to be a grandee of the Lords Committee to work that out, or?
Well, if we go back a year to what they were saying then, that sort of crew, then the world was going to end approximately, wasn't it? House prices were going to fall 20%. Actually, I think that's a good thing if they did. But anyway, the economy, according to Sir Charles, being not quite yet a Lord, give the man time, that it was going to shrink by 1 or 2. And then, of course, it sailed on pretty much regardless. If we look internationally, something else I was looking at this morning, there's been an issue over Ireland's numbers, and I noticed that you're looking at the impact of them. Should the UK economy drop by 1%, they think that theirs will fall by between 0.3 and 0.8. Not only could you drive a bus through that, then there's this obsession with it falling, because at the end of the sentence it says, oh, not much happened in 2016. And of course it didn't.
Okay, well, we'll move along to the FTSE stock to watch, where there's lots of famous sources involved with Reckitt Benckiser's deal. It's sold its food business to McCormick for $4.2 billion with I think mustard, Old Bay seasoning, and French's mustard, and all these brands that we may not be totally familiar with. But anyway, 4.2 billion in the kitty for Reckitt's there. And then moving on to our AIM stock to watch, one of the recent rises, one of the best performers of the year, IQE, which is apparently a semiconductor wafer company, not a sort of technology that somebody of my age is fully familiar with, but speculation there that they're going to have a deal with Apple, which hopefully won't go the same way as the deal between Apple and Imagination Technologies, where they fell out of love with each other, unfortunately. Moving along, we've got the pound here, and back down a cent before it's a cent down on where it was before the CPI figures yesterday. Looks like 130, the floor at the moment, the new floor for a pound dollar.
I see that as being quite hopeful. If we return to the inflation numbers, one of the stories there was this year the pound's rallied against the US dollar. It was 10 cents before the drop. People can remember the days when we were down at 121 in January, I think, when the Financial Times was assuring us that the only way was down and collapse was nigh. What this means for the inflation picture, though, is that because of so many commodities being priced in US dollars, that's turned it round to some extent. There's still a possibility of a higher inflation number in the autumn this year in the way that things feed in, but some of the edge has been taken off it, I think, if we stay here, and also we've got the oil prices done.
Right, and we've just got euro sterling there above the pivotal 88 pence level for now, but shying away from hitting anything near 90 at this stage. Next, we've got the FX markets, where dollar yen, which seems to be holding mysteriously around the 112 level, I suppose, waiting for the BOJ to give its comments in the middle of the night, our time.
Well, it's in, I think, quite a quandary here. If you follow the Japanese media, which I do from the time that I worked out there, they're increasingly pointing out that Abenomics has been running for a few years and what's been achieved. Putting in the hype hasn't worked. If we move to the actual monetary policy, then there was an initial move in response to it when the yen fell from approximately 80 to, well, it got into the 120s, didn't it, at one point in the peak of this, but now it's strengthened again. And where are they going? What are they doing? They're printing an extraordinary amount. They had to have another go a week or two ago with what they now call yield control.
So they're running just to stand still, basically. Well, they're running and they're not even standing still. They're going backwards a bit. So it's not looking very good.
This is one of the issues with QE. If you look at this in terms of economic theory, if we were to become female and Doctor Who and jump back in time, we'd discover that everyone then thought if you poured this money in, your currency would collapse. Whereas in fact, the yen, in spite of what they're doing, sometimes seems to strengthen.
All right, and then euro dollar back above still above $1.15. It's been the big surprise to many who were looking for 113, 112 to be the top for that particular cross, but waiting for Draghi tomorrow.
There is, and also there is a big warning signal here. I spotted yesterday. My old employer, Deutsche Bank, has gone from saying that the euro will go to parity against the US dollar to 130. So that means it's quite possible.
All right, so we're going back. So we're going
back down because they were completely wrong before. Yes.
It was a bit of a worry for me, but now I feel much more reassured. And then after the recent rise in the shares of Spire Healthcare, Liberum Capital have reduced their rating on the stock from buy to hold, and a target down from 400 pence to 370. Core number, which is apparently the mystery number, is how much the BBC pays its presenters and journalists, over £150,000 every year, so £30 million. Presumably some of that comes from the licence fee.
Yes, well, all of it, doesn't it? BBC does have some other sources of income, advertising around the world from BBC World, doesn't it?
The DVDs from David Attenborough, I think.
Yeah,
they earn billions.
Exactly, and I was about to say Top Gear. Well, anyway, it used to earn billions.
Well, it probably is a legacy thing there, yes.
I'm sure it still earns something, yes.
Right, okay, well, let's move on from that figure. More economics here. Housing starts in the US for June at 1:30, then 3:30 the EIA crude oil stock exchange. And then finally, the thing that both of us are going to be waiting for, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Definitely.
Bank of Japan's rate decision and monetary policy statement, which will no doubt cause dollar yen to wobble around quite viciously. On that note, Shaun Richards from Notayesmaneconomics, thanks for opening the Core Finance show today.